Immediate questions for Jenny before we get into the panel discussion? You left them speechless, Jenny. Thank you. I love
Mic drop.
And the Hispanic Chamber is one of our partners. I do see Stephen Bradley from the African American Chamber, who's a partner, and Tara from the Philadelphia Chamber. But I think they'll find those slides. We'll share those with all of our partners, because I think there's some wonderful insights in there as to why businesses need to be concerned about this, both from their customer standpoint, their senior executive standpoint, and very importantly, from their current and future employees. So thank you very much. So I'm really excited now, because this perfect segue from Jenny and the why and the what the Civic 50 is, to how we're going to bring that to life here in the Philadelphia region. So we have 3 of our leaders on the Greater Philadelphia Corporate Volunteer Council who are going to share their perspectives in the panel. So we have Sarah Reichter, who is currently at Wells Fargo as the Vice President of Workplace Giving and a Senior Strategy Consultant there. We'll go first with her in a moment. We also have Courtney McDade, who is the co-chair of the GPCVC, and she is a director of public affairs at Independence Blue Cross. And we have Christine Jereb with Comcast, who is a director of community impact. So I'll say a little more about each of them as I ask them their first question. But we'll start with Sarah. And we did prep calls with each of these ladies, so I can't wait for them to like blow you away, because they're practitioners and they're leaders. And we got on the phone with Sarah, and I was like blown away, because she's like, oh, of course I know the Civic 50. Not only has she participated in the Civic 50 with Wells Fargo, who is a Civic 50 winner from last year and previous years, she also joined Wells Fargo having worked in the early days when the Civic 50 first came out. She was an executive at Ameriprise. And in the Twin Cities, she also, in her role at the Twin Cities Community Foundation, was supporting the companies there who are extremely engaged in the community and so well respected. So we're thrilled to have Sarah's perspective from all of those experiences with the Civic 50 here joining us today. So I'm going to open up with Sarah and ask her to comment on why, in each of your roles, did you participate in the Civic 50? Share your experiences from all of these folks who are our chamber partners, who are going to be encouraging their members to participate, and to each of the companies. We want honesty, we want authenticity, we want to know everything about it, good, all the good, and anything, because we're not launched yet. So we're doing these exchanges because we really want to learn. We want to, and Jenny knows me, we are going to shine above every other region. And we want to get this, we want to come out of the chute with a massive, massive grand slam here. So Sarah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, great. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for having me. As Diane said, I am in the Twin Cities. I am sitting officing from home in the Twin Cities, and I work for Wells Fargo. I'm a workplace giving strategist at Wells Fargo, and my work is enterprise-wide, so I oversee our workplace giving strategies. I work on a team that is all employee engagement, and so that's from volunteerism, now virtual volunteerism, skills-based service, workplace giving, our United Way partnerships, and integrating across our national partnerships. So it's a really broad role. And in my previous life, I've been at Wells Fargo for a year, and prior to that, I was at Ameriprise on their community relations team as well, and overseeing that global employee engagement. And prior to that, I was in the fundraising space at community foundations, and I have also served on our Corporate Volunteer Council board. So I am connected across the city, and I really see the purpose of the Civic 50 across many spaces. So at Wells Fargo, we have teams of people that manage our surveys. It's such a big company, and I will be real with you that it is such a big company. And that is not like most companies. Most companies are more like Ameriprise or the small business down the road, where when a survey comes up, you scamper to find all the data to fill in the blanks. At Wells Fargo, there's 2 people that manage the data collection and the communications with it. And that's just because there's 268,000 employees. But at Ameriprise, when the survey first came out, I was a part of our team that looked at this as a really unique opportunity. And we took the first chance to be a part of it. And so that's what's exciting about this regional survey, is that you're really setting the baseline and you grow from there, as Jenny mentioned. Our team, like I just said, we scampered to find the data. That is how it was. And we learned from that experience. We were looking for KPIs and metrics, and what we recognized was, man, we really got to get organized in our stories, in our data. How do we keep this? If we want to start building our CSR program or building upon it, we need to be organized. So that was one thing that we learned from it. And then Ameriprise was awarded one of the first Civic 50 recognitions. It was a great learning event. And we took that and we put that stamp, that little icon, on everything. So Jenny, as you say, you get this little marker and it went on every presentation. It gave credence to our work across the executives. Being in the Twin Cities, we're in the home of Target and Best Buy and Medtronic and Wells Fargo and other Fortune 500 companies. And there was, it's really hard to get airspace when the others were giving away so much money. And that's just, that's their business model is built on CSR. And we were really building up our program. So we took this opportunity and really leveraged that award. So as you are doing this at a regional level, it is a great opportunity to start building your recognition for those future audiences, for those your future employees, and your current employees. So those were that's some of my experience with it. I know that we've got other questions and other speakers, so I can keep elaborating, but that's where I will start.
Great, thank you for those insightful opening remarks. We've got more to come from Sarah. Courtney dove into the Civic 50 last year for the first time. Many of the Blues around the country are on the Civic 50 list. Our local Independence Blue Cross decided to begin participating last year. So Courtney, we'd love to hear from you, your experiences for what led up to that, what the experience was like for you, how your executives are so supportive of this. Turn the floor over to you, Courtney.
Okay, thanks so much, Diane. Yes, happy to share my story, and also just in my role as co-chair at the GPCVC. I'm really excited that we're bringing this, to our region. I think there's just incredible work happening across the Philadelphia region, from the larger businesses down to the very, very small. So I think the thing I'm most excited about is to have all the chambers partnering with us and at the table and really taking a look at how we go about this to make sure that we're inclusive and accessible, and giving an opportunity again to showcase some of the amazing things that are happening, across this community. So yeah, so I can share a little bit about my experience. As Diane mentioned, I'm with Independence Blue Cross, and our employees are really based here regionally in Philadelphia, but we do have a national membership base. And last year was our first year submitting for the National Civic 50, and truthfully, it was something we had our eye on, or I had my eye on for a couple years. Is really, a benchmark for us, and we would read, some really great, case studies of what was happening across the country. It was really like the best of the best work for us to look at. So, kind of after observing for a couple years, we decided last year, what, let's go in. We think we're doing great work. We want to throw our hat into the ring. So. I coordinated that process on behalf of my organization, and I think really one of the great things was it was a great opportunity to kind of collaborate with a lot of different business areas across the organization in a more formal and coordinated way. As we kicked off the work together, bringing together folks from my HR team, our foundation, our innovation area, and being able to talk about, what is the survey, and explore more about the ways that our work really intersects. So that was a pretty exciting kind of development as part of this. And I really liked the last slide that Jenny showed as part of her presentation, because I do feel like that's applicable to us. We weren't selected this year, but again, I mean, what we took away from the experience was truly invaluable. They produced a really great report benchmarking, how you scored relative to the other applicants. And I know my team, we really sat down and did a deep dive of, where are we falling short and what are some opportunities for us. And we've really taken those findings, and a lot of those things are part of our 2021 plans. So again, for us, it was instrumental. Likewise, as Diane mentioned, our leadership was very engaged and interested in the process. And they even said to us, are we going for it again, in 2021? Do you think we'll get it? So being able to share kind of what are some opportunities for us based on, how we performed in the 2020 survey has been really helpful for us in kind of bolstering that support too. So I will stop there then. And again, I'm happy to take questions and talk more about the experience.
Great, thank you, Courtney. And last but not least, Christine Jerub is with Comcast, and Comcast was an early adopter of the Civic 50 and has been recognized. So Christine, I know you have a fantastic story to tell, so why don't we hear from you now?
Yeah, so thank you all for being here today. It's interesting, I think back, it feels like we started doing Civic 50 like last year, but I look back and it's like 6-7 years of it, if not more. We kind of approached it at Comcast. I know, like, back then I was on our communications team within Community Impact, and there was a lot of changes in the available awards applications that focused primarily on community engagement work at the time. And Civic 50 was like something that emerged as one that really felt like it hit the sweet spot. It wasn't too broad, but it allowed you really to focus on your philanthropic portfolio. And so that for us was a driver as to why we decided to put our hat in the ring for it. I think we missed the very first year because we didn't know about it, and then decided to apply the next year. And I think it was also a really interesting time for the company because it was right as our merger with NBC Universal was going through. And so for us, it was like, okay, well, our data is kind of strong at Comcast, but like, how do we pull NBC into this and tell a holistic story? And I see Tiffany chuckling in the background because she was on our team at the time at Comcast, but it's like, how do we bring this all together? And so for us, like, selfishly, it was a little bit about, hey, there's an awards application out here that like we could put ourselves in for. But I'll echo what the other panelists said, in that actually going through the exercise and helping us identify our gaps, helping us identify, future programmatic needs, where we could highlight different things across our portfolio was really helpful. And again, we're a big company, but I think one of the things I'll emphasize, depending on the other companies represented here or businesses, is having been to Points of Light's national events, I'm always amazed at the breadth of company and business of all different sizes, shapes, industries, and just like the power of good that's cross sector, which is really awesome. So I would definitely just echo, and I think Jenny kind of said this in her initial tee-up, is like, don't be intimidated in putting your hat in the ring for it. There will be things, like Sarah said, where like you can't fill it out, and that's okay, but just go for it anyway.
That's great. Thank you, Christine. And we do really appreciate that Points of Light has been so open and receptive to any suggestions that we've had. The racial equity lens and the whole panel and committee at Points of Light who went through the survey and ensured that the survey was current and reflective of our current times, and that they have really listened to us, that we have a very, very engaged small business community here, and that this is a benchmarking and assessment tool that's not just for the big companies, but for every company. So we're putting a big tent together here, and we want everybody to come in. So As you can hear, everyone, we have 3 really amazing leaders and practitioners here who have experience with the Civic 50 and are going to be integral to our launch and implementation of the Civic 50 here. So now is your chance. Raise those hands, jump in the chat. What is on your mind? What would you like to ask any of them or our Points of Light colleagues? Tiffany, you're not asking me a question?
Oh, but that was a good try, though. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Diane, I may say something while people are putting their questions into the chat or getting their thoughts in order. To that point about putting your hat in the ring, I want to push on that a little bit more because the majority of participants are likely going to be from medium and smaller businesses. And especially those smaller businesses, you're going to come across questions. And I want folks who are going to support those audiences to really listen. You're going to come across questions that you may not be able to answer. And I really want to reinforce that that is really okay. Neither will other businesses your size. So where and how, just the idea of thinking about these questions and starting to put that vocabulary and perspective into your thinking about giving and engagement, that's a great start. And other companies your size are going to be in exactly the same boat. So the idea is to try and not expect that you're going to be able to answer the questions in a robust way that a Comcast, a Wells Fargo, is gonna be able to do that.
Yeah, I would just say to that, I mean, there are still questions that we put not applicable on the survey on. There are still things that we're like, we're never going to do this. And that's okay because it does not fit with our business or not fit with our direction. So, when you start filling this out, you will definitely have things you can't complete, and that is okay. Don't let it stop you from doing it.
Great. And so thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
I have a
Christine.
question.
I'm going to go to Jamie's first, Marie, and then
Okay.
come to you. So Jamie, I think, asked a question that I know folks are prepared to answer. Her question is how each of you convinced your leadership, your senior leadership, and your direct management on participating in the Civic 50, on completing it, because there are resources. And if you can kind of share, and I know, Courtney, you had in particular a great way that you organized your team to respond. So how did you convince your leadership? What resources, what parts of your team at IBX did you need to engage to bring the full completion of the tool?
I started with advocating within my own management team and sharing the list from the previous year and saying like, wow, look, there's Comcast, NBC, Universal, they're right next door to us. There was a couple other Blue plans that were on the list. And I said, we're right there alongside, them in terms of the work that they're doing. So, what an amazing opportunity for us. So for me, it was, kind of showing, the recognition and the very prestigious companies that were, a part of this, that's saying like, wow, like this is something that we should be a part of. And then the other piece, of course, too, is we're always focused on, our CSR efforts. And to me, I also sold it really is like, this is a really great opportunity for us to benchmark ourselves. So, even if we aren't selected, I mean, just to get the results and be able to take those findings would be invaluable. So that was what got me the support. And then, yeah, it was really a collective effort. I brought in very early on our communications folks, our foundation team, our HR, especially our diversity, equity, inclusion teams, but really kind of across the board there, our facilities area that manages our suppliers and supplier diversity programs. And it really was the first time kind of that we had all collectively come together to talk about our work within this framework. So that was exciting to me, and I'm excited, to undertake it again and bring this group back together and share kind of the findings and, mobilize on those opportunities to improve.
Great, thank you, Courtney. And I see we have a couple of questions, so I'll go backwards in the chat since Marie had raised her hand. So Marie, did you want to ask your question and comment on whether you've had applied in the past nationally, or it would be your first? Like, give us a little background on what your company's already done.
So
we position
I
you.
work with Courtney.
Okay.
And I was just curious as to, like, should we apply? We already applied, obviously, for the national, but knowing that we're discussing the regional too, should we apply for both?
Yeah.
Should we? Yeah. So that's kind of where I was going. And the other question that I had was going through the exercise and seeing the definition of external volunteering and internal volunteering versus corporately sponsored, and that definition, when just in the application itself, was a little confusing, I feel sometimes. And then how it was interesting to see, I think, how it was interpreted when we got the benchmark,
Okay.
and versus how we interpreted it when we were reporting on numbers.
Good. Terrific feedback. Jeff is right there. We will clean up the definition when you hit help for that question. We'll get a little more specific. And I mean, for us right now, so starting with the bottom up, as Diane had suggested, definitely apply for both. Your Civic 50 for Philadelphia is based on your Philadelphia population, not on your broader national. And so Diane and team can help to identify what will be included, so you know which employees, it's not your Pittsburgh office, it's not your, what is the definition that you all will use for the local employee base that you can use. Getting descriptive about internal and external volunteering. Internal volunteering for us is really, it's a newer way to look at things that really is reflective of the time and commitment people give to playing a behavior, community, civic engagement role through ERGs and other ways that they're spending meaningful time working on social challenges, social issues with their peers inside the organization. So a little bit, that's the big vision frame for what those two things, how we see them differentiated, but we'll get very specific in the descriptors. So Jeff, if you've got that note. And then there's a note here too, Diane, I'll just take it from Elizabeth Nathans on providing an example of how we standardize the language. It's a little bit getting everyone, by taking the survey, you start to frame your work using the language of the survey. And that is, the more companies who take the survey, the more people have that language at their fingertips, the more it is universalized among the users in the survey, and gives folks a way to talk to each other, a way to understand their work relative to their peers. And so that's how we think about the sort of standardizing the language. The language and choices we've made for words in the Civic 50, we get feedback all the time that it seems a little robust, a little wordy, a little, academic. The survey was originally designed by a group of 10 academics. So we got the best thinkers from all over, really, when we designed the survey, as well as people like True Impact, like Bebop Alondra, Vera Works, who are really lead thinkers in measuring how civic engagement at companies to really shape that language. And so it's a little long-winded, and probably always will be, because of the integrity of getting those people's perspective into the survey.
Great, thank you, Jenny. And I would add in there too that I think, and Courtney and I were just joking about this yesterday, that you're going to show up more competitively at the regional level. So yes, we encourage everyone to do the national, and if you haven't done that yet, do the regional, and that will help you dip your toe in the water. But we would anticipate that the amazing role that IBX plays in this region, that you'll fare quite well in the Civic 50 regionally, and also be competitive at the national level. So really do encourage both. And when we were prepping, there was like, should we be pushing the national and on this call today? And I'm like, well, let's really push the regional. And yes, you should do the national. Our time is, we want to really get this regional out there. And I also thought that, and I think it was you, Christine, comment on the language, because the language, not just to the outside world that we start talking about the impact that the business community is having, but even with inside our own organizations, people don't really realize how much value is being provided. So maybe you could comment on that, Christine.
Yeah, so I think of like the first time I helped work on the survey, I was actually the writer of it, the data gatherer. I was like I think I pulled the whole thing together. And I must have sent 3,000 questions to Jenny and her team, because I was like, well, we call it this. Is this the same thing you're saying? And I can't speak enough, and I'm sorry, Jenny, because I might have just sent you a lot more work, but can't say enough about, if you're having that, like, your language within your company and how you speak about things, and you're unclear about how that matches up with the methodology, just shoot a note to the inbox and ask. Sorry, Jenny. But, because I think that really helped us along the way. And then we're like, okay, yeah, we are kind of talking apples to apples here. And it's just, that's more of the industry standard term versus like our Comcastic language that we have. And that's okay. But, it comes back to, the point earlier about like, there are going to be things that regardless of the clarification you get, you're just going to decide not to fill out the question. And that's all right. Just do what you can.
That's great. Thank you. Comcastic. I like it. It's an adjective now. Okay. Jenny?
Diane, I would say absolutely. And also that is what the network of organizations who are the partners here, that's also a role that they'll play. So Jeff and I will do a little training with them on getting them into Civic 50 language mode, so that they understand they're your first line of access in terms of supporting questions. If they can't answer it, they'll send it on to us, but in general, they're going to be able to answer it. So those organizations that are really playing a coordinating role will have the ability to support the companies in their network who are taking the survey. And as for taking the national survey, the bright line is revenues of over $1 billion. So if your company has revenue over $1 billion, then you are eligible to take the national survey.
Right. And I'm sorry to keep Stephen Bradley waiting. We almost know that he is on the Philadelphia Foundation board, so technically my boss, and I've kept him waiting long enough. So Stephen has a great question about, Jenny, have you seen any of the other regionals or even at the national level incentives or other encouragements for small businesses to participate?
So survey is not open to small businesses at the national level, right? This is a bit of a 1-2 year experiment in getting smaller business in, and that I turn over to you at the regional level, right? We give you a survey tool and the tools and recognition. If incentives are going to help you all, figure them out and offer them. I don't think there's a problem. We have at the national level used education as an incentive. So learning, training, webinars, question answering, that everyone who takes the survey gets a short benchmark, like a snapshot benchmark, regardless of whether you make the list or not. Many organizations find that very valuable. You can also buy, and at the local level, it's much less expensive than at the national level, a longer snapshot, a longer, not even a snapshot, just a complete benchmark of every question that you took in the survey, and really get a deep dive. And for many, that's incentive enough.
That's great. And I do think that the survey itself and becoming part of this network and some of the examples that you gave for small and medium businesses to learn from each other and from largers, and we just said yesterday, from largest to learn from small businesses, to not lose sight of on the ground. That's where true community impact happens, not up in big towers in the corporate world. So we see a lot of value. But Stephen, yes, in our partner meetings, we should follow up and see. I love your point, Jenny, of maybe inviting the small businesses that complete the survey to join some of our programming at the Corporate Volunteer Council and some of the other things that we offer at the Philadelphia Foundation. Lots of opportunities. So before we launch, we will definitely figure out what's the right formula on that. So thank you, Stephen. Ashley, I know you had a couple of questions. So.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Diane. So just as we're thinking about, also this kind of following on Stephen's question about you know, sort of making this accessible and getting more of the small and mid-sized businesses in our region to participate. Are there tools that, or I guess guides that we could share, recognizing that like they're probably not going to have a whole department that's focused on this work, but so that we could say, if you're going to participate in this, like these are the kinds of things that you should start pulling together that could sort of go along with it, so that it's not like they get into it and are suddenly like overwhelmed by the kinds of phrases and all of this stuff that, you know, is not necessarily their like day-to-day language, because they're not necessarily directly focused on this through like a department. It's more kind of built into, you know, the one HR person's role throughout the whole company.
Yeah, yes. So we'll give a toolkit to the partners through Diane and Leo, probably, that are just those sorts of things. So one of them is, these are the 12 data points you will need to collect for this survey. So exactly that. It'll be 14, I think, this year, though, because of the 2 additional DEI questions.
Right. And I think what's fabulous about this, because you don't get it, and I think Christine alluded to this, that Points of Light is very supportive. And at the regional level, we have Leo working with support from Jeff, that you can literally call a human being and ask questions. How do you like that in this day and age? So so we're really excited about having that human touch to any company that wants to talk about as they're getting the survey, going through it. So we will have that on support throughout. Also, to your point right now, Ashley, about what to get ready, I'd like to ask kind of, you know, Courtney and Sarah and Christine to comment on that, because I'm going to, as soon as 1 minute before we close the call, I'll put a timeline up. So we are not launched yet. I saw Jamie and others ask a question also about, we are preparing to launch. So this is our prep work to get everything ready so we hit the ground running when we launch in March. So I'll show that timeline in a minute. But if Courtney or Sarah or Christine want to kind of talk about what are like long lead items that you from your experience, you may think that companies may not have at their fingertips, that they can leisurely start to get together now, so that when the survey opens, they'll be hitting the ground running. So, Sarah, I saw your microphone go on.
I would say, so at the regional level, our Colorado Wells Fargo office completed the regional survey in the past, and they had their regional stories. They were looking for stories. So I would say start collecting your stories. What were your, you know, if you've done any reports, how have you shared your philanthropic involvements, investments? So start collecting that, that story work, and any numbers that you've reported. It's an interesting, the way that some of the questions were worded in the Civic 50, you've got your standard numbers that you always report, but then they're looking at it from a different angle. So just start collecting the numbers that have been your standard numbers to date. And then you're gonna read the questions and then consider how the survey is asking for data, but get those numbers and the stories compiled to start.
Yeah, Sarah, it's a great point, and I think one of the values of the Civic 50 is there's not a rigid 12-month period. So it's whatever is the most relevant 12 months of data that you have, be it your fiscal year or a calendar year or whatever is the data set that works for you. The only thing we ask is that you're consistent, that all of all of your reporting is for that same 12 months. But otherwise, you get to be flexible for what is the best set of data for you in terms of how your company already reports and all of those things.
Okay, and we have time.
Yeah,
for
I would say that when we, oh, I lost you. When we were compiling our data, we had a spreadsheet and of how we came up with all of our numbers. And then we used that year to year because we wanted to be able to make sure we could do it again.
Yes, 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 yes.
Great,
Like
thank you.
spreadsheet with the notes next to it. Critical.
So I knew this was going to happen, that this call was going to go by in a blink. But sadly, we're at that point. I'm going to ask for any final question and then ask for Courtney, Sarah, and Christine to kind of give their closing remarks. And then I have, like I said, one quick timeline chart to review with everybody. So last call for any big question. Otherwise, we'll ask the ladies to kind of bring it home for us.
And I was going to say earlier up in the chat, there was like, what communications did you do following the award? And we never addressed that.
Oh, great. I was trying to keep up, so I'm not a good
I was
host.
just thinking we should come
Because you had some excellent thoughts on that too.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, particularly in the early years, we used the heck out of out of every component. Civic 50 provided a wonderful toolkit to us that had everything from like things you can put in your email signatures to badges and graphics and how to speak about it. And so, we definitely did a big push on that internally. We did internal newsletter articles, included it in our CSR reports. It was popping up everywhere. Digital signage in our buildings, you name it. So it became kind of like a, along with all of our other awards on best places to work and things like that, something that got elevated to that level for us. And we did have a good partnership too with our HR and our talent recruitment team to make sure that was incorporated in materials that they produce. But those are different ways that we used it. Still do. We're like, we made it again, thank God. We made it again, thank God. Every year.
And once those CEOs see you make it, you got to stay on the list, Christine.
Exactly.
I will say we see the list and say the same thing. So it's we love to have people come back.
Absolutely. Sarah, closing thoughts?
I agree with everything that's been said. In the PR aspect of it, it takes a long time to build up your reputation, and whatever rewards and recognition you can gather along the way, that's your repository for when the bad day happens. And Wells Fargo, we know bad days have happened. And so these awards are things, just put your name in and try it, even if you may not win. Because that's what you're going to call out on a bad day, and you need that for your stakeholders internally and externally. So I don't think you have anything to lose. Be on time, and the reward is a lot greater when you have this in your toolkit for later on the rainy day.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Courtney.
Yeah, and I will just close again. I think we talked a lot about, kind of the technicalities and the language, and I would just emphasize for this regional survey, again, between the work happening with Points of Light, with Diane and the team at Philadelphia Foundation, and then all the chambers that have been in the table talking through this process, I feel that we're really striving hard to make this accessible for everybody. So I just, if people would take one thing away, would be don't be, kind of intimidated by this, and taking Sarah's advice around thinking about what's your story, about what you're doing in the community, and really starting there. And the data piece, that will come, but I just would want to emphasize and encourage everybody to give it a shot, because there's so many amazing stories to tell, from an Independence Blue Cross on down to a very, very small company with fewer than 5 employees. So that would be my kind of message I'd want to leave you all with.
Thank you, Courtney. And I'll have Leo flash up the timeline really quick so it's all on our radar. We're in really working hard with our partners, and I thank you very much for those last remarks, Courtney, because we were going to make it as simple as possible. We're going to make it open to everyone. We'll do incentives where we feel they'll be valuable, in addition to the value prop of the survey itself. So the national survey is launching on December 15th. We intend to launch our survey in early March, and we're going to do all the buildup. So this is really important that Points of Light is listening to us, that the Philadelphia Foundation is listening to all of you and all of our partners so that we get this right, and we have a phenomenal response rate from the companies in our region. So cannot thank the Points of Light enough for all of their support so far and for putting this amazing framework in place. And I can't emphasize enough, this is free to the companies. And this is like instructional and provides opportunity to get these benchmark reports that really shows you where you stand against companies in your region and in your industry. And so this is just like a phenomenal opportunity for all of us. Sarah, Courtney, Christine, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. There's nothing like hearing from people who have been there, done that, and we can learn so much from all of you. Thank you to our partners, the African American Chamber and the Philly Chamber that are on the call with us today. They're integral to the success of this, and to each of our members and from the GPCVC, and to Leo, who we cannot do any of this without. So thank you all very, very much. We're open for questions at any time. So just drop us a line, and as you have thoughts or whatever, again, we're in the shaping this. When we open that survey, we want, you know, just to be inundated with hundreds of applications for this wonderful thing. So thank you all very, very much, and have a great day. Give yourselves a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, everyone.